Hi everyone, this is Ms. Afric. Today we're going to talk about graphing trig functions, and specifically we're just going to focus on sine and cosine. And actually we're going to be doing a couple days just focusing on sine and cosine. Alright, now you should see some information that's already written down here. What I would recommend you do is just pause the video real quick, jot this down in your notes, and then play it so that you can hear me explain it a little bit too. Alright, hopefully then it'll make a little more sense. So again, pause it, write it all down, then press play. Alright, these are the two general equations. One's sine, one's cosine. That's the only difference. And you can see we have a bunch of variables going on. There's an A, B, C, and a D, right, in the same spots. Those are all going to be different transformations that we're doing to the sine and cosine function. So any transformation that's happening inside, so that would be the B and the C. Those are horizontal transformations, and they're always reversed. And any transformation that's happening outside, that would be the A and the D, those are vertical and they're always exactly the same. Now with trig functions, graphing is a little different, so there's going to be some new vocab that we haven't had before with transformations. So that's what you have listed here. Alright, amplitude, that's the absolute value of A, so it's using this number that's right in front, but always positive because it's a distance. The distance between the midline and either the max or the min. It should be the same. Alright, the period comes from the B variable, which is right here. Alright, and it's always 2p divided by B. That makes sense because it's inside, so it's reversed. So instead of times B, it's divided by B. Alright, and that's the horizontal distance between the start and the end of one full cycle. You'll see that the sine and cosine graphs, they're periodic, which means that they repeat over and over again. So we just sometimes want one full cycle. Well, the period is just the distance of one full cycle. Alright, the interval, that comes from the period, and it's just the horizontal distance between each x value. The vertical shift is that value you're adding on the outside, that's D, and that tells you where to put your midline. And the phase shift is our C value, the one inside. Alright, but we're going to talk more about the phase shift later. So for now, I wouldn't worry about it. I would just write it down so you have it somewhere. Alright, let's start with the basic graphs of sine and cosine. Now, we just finished talking about the unit circle, and actually these graphs are kind of based on the unit circle. So real quick, I'm going to just draw a rough sketch of our unit circle. And remember, the most important points in our unit circle are the ones at our quadrantal angles. So I'm going to label all of those. Alright, this is 0 radians, and the point is 1, 0. When we graph just in radians for the most part, so I'm just going to be focusing on radians. Alright, so pi over 2, and the point is 0, 1. We've got pi, and that point is negative 1, 0. And then 3 pi over 2, and that point is 0, negative 1. Alright, the reason I showed you that is so that we can kind of get a sense of where this graph is coming from. For the sine function, remember that the sine function is always the y coordinate in the unit circle. And in these functions, what we're inserting for the sine x, in other words, is the angle. So it'll be an angle and then the y coordinate. So for example, at angle 0, we have a y coordinate of 0. So that would be the point 0, 0. Alright, at the angle pi over 2, so let's say that that's our next x value, pi over 2. We have the point, remember y coordinate, so that would be 1. So we would have the point pi over 2, 1. Alright, our next angle is pi. So at pi, the sine is 0, so we'd be back down to 0. And then our next angle is 3 pi over 2. The sine there would be negative 1, so down 1 is negative 1. And then once I get over to 2 pi, I'm back to 0. Alright, and remember, we could keep going all the way around the circle, so technically this could just keep going, and it's going to follow this exact same pattern. Alright, so if I graphed, it would look something like that. Alright, and again, it could just keep going forever and ever and ever. Now let's talk about some of this information here. Amplitude. Remember, amplitude is the distance from the midline to the top, or midline to the bottom. So here that's 1. And it's based off of the number that's right in front here. All right, the period, we'll take a look at this. One full cycle, so I like to think of it as it's like a top hump and then a bottom hump. That would be from 0 to 2 pi. So one full cycle here, one period, is going to be 2 pi. And the interval, we always take the period and divide it by 4. Or it's just the distance between each x value, so that would be pi over 2. I'm going up by pi over 2's. And my vertical shift is the midline, so that would just be 0. So that's just the general sine function. Now we're going to be transforming it a little bit, alright, so you'll see that in a bit when I try an example. Let's just quickly take a look at cosine too. Cosine's just a little different. Let's see if you can notice how. Alright, with cosine, when I have the angle 0, cosine I'm looking at the x-coordinate. So at the angle 0, my x-coordinate is actually 1. So I'm going to start up here. Alright, my next angle, pi over 2. Now I'm back to 0. My next angle is pi, and we go down to -1. 3 pi over 2, the cosine of that is 0. And 2 pi, we are back up to 1. And again, we could keep going, but you can get the sense of what it would look like. Alright, can you tell the difference between sine and cosine? The difference is actually where they start. Sine will start at the midline, whereas cosine will start at either the max or the min. And we'll talk more about that in a second when we do an example. So again, let's just review this information. Amplitude, once again, distance from the middle to the top, so that would be 1. And once again, it comes from this number up here. Period is again going to be 2 pi, because that's one full cycle. The interval is also pi over 2, because that's what I'm going up by in the x's. And my vertical shift is 0, because that's where my midline is. Alright, so again, these are the general graphs. Now let's take a look at some that are transformed. So take a look at number 1. Just a heads up, some of my problems might be a little different than yours. So if you notice that, just scratch out your problem and rewrite mine, because I kind of moved some of them around after we had already given you the notes. So just scratch out yours and rewrite mine. Alright, in these we're going to graph the equations and state the important information, but we're going to graph 2 periods. In these ones above, alright, this right here is only 1 period. So maybe make a note of that. We're going to be graphing 2. So let's see how it's done. Alright, starting with the amplitude. Remember, amplitude is the absolute value of your A term, and the A term is the number in front. So in this case, that would be 3. So the absolute value of 3 is just 3, so my amplitude is 3. Boom. Okay, the period. Period, make a little side note, is 2 pi divided by b. Do you remember where b is? B is the number right here in front of x. So in this case, that's just a 1. So it would be 2 pi divided by 1, which is just 2 pi. The interval is always the period divided by 4, cut into fourths. So 2 pi divided by 4, that simplifies, right, to pi over 2, or 1 pi over 2 if you'd like. And then the vertical shift is the number you're adding on the end. That's the plus d that's at the end. Well, in this case, it's a plus 0, right? So our vertical shift will be 0. So that's how we start, just with our information here. Oopsies, didn't mean to cross it out. Just wanted to highlight it for you. So now let's see how we graph. Alright, to graph, the first thing I want you to do is check your midline, because we always need our midline drawn. Well, when our midline is 0, that's just right here. It's the x-axis, so I don't have to redraw it. It's already there for me. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is use my amplitude to figure out how high this graph is going to go, and then how low it's going to go. So since my amplitude is 3, that tells me I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and then down 1, 2, 3. And you always start at the midline to count that. Okay, let me redo that bottom one. It wasn't quite even. There we go. Okay, so midline, up 3, midline, down 3. Now's the slightly harder part, and this is where we actually start the graphing part. That's where we have to use our period and our interval. Alright, now we're going to graph 2 periods. So if 1 period is 2 pi, what's 2 periods? I hope you said 4 pi. So that means 4 pi is where we're going to end. Alright, now we can't just start at 0 and go all the way to 4 pi. We wouldn't know what's going on in between, right? So we're going to cut this in half, and try and be accurate if you can. And 4 pi cut in half is 2 pi. Still not quite enough. So I'm going to cut it in half again. There's pi. Still not enough. The way you'll know you're done cutting it in half is because whatever your interval is, that should be your first, like what you're going up by, right? So I'm going to cut it in half one more time. Half of 1 pi is 1/2 pi, which is pi over 2. So now I can see what I'm going up by, and now I just got to fill in the rest. Halfway between 1 pi and 2 pi is 1/2 pi, and 1/2 is 3/2, so 3/2 pi. Okay, halfway between 2 pi and 4 pi is 3 pi. Halfway between 2 and 3 is 2.5, which is 5/2 pi. And halfway between 3 and 4 is 3.5, which is 7/2 pi. Okay, so those are all the x values that we're going to use. Notice how I'm going up by pi over 2's. That's good because that's what I should be going up by since that's my interval. Now, here's the last piece you need to figure out in order to do this. Okay, we need to check to see if it's sine or cosine, because you remember the difference between the two? Sine always starts at the midline. So make a note of that if you didn't already. Okay, from there, if it's a positive sign, then it goes up first, and if it's a negative sign, it goes down first. So again, make sure you're writing this down, it's really important. So since this is a sine, I'm going to start at my midline, that means just 0, 0. And since it's positive, I'm going to go up first. So I go up to my max, down to my middle, down to my min, up to my middle. And we just keep following the pattern. Okay, once we're done, we connect it as neatly as possible. So try and maintain the curviness, I guess you could say. Don't make them straight. And that's our graph. That's 2 full periods, right? If you think about it, there's one on the left, there's one on the right. All right, let's try another one. So scroll down, let's do number 2. Number 2, the amplitude. Once again, we're looking at the number in front. Well, what number is that? It's a -1. But remember, amplitude is the absolute value. So the absolute value of -1 is just 1. Okay, period once again is 2 pi divided by b. And once again, the b value here is just 1. So that would be 2 pi divided by 1, which is just 2 pi. And our interval is 2 pi divided by 4. So pi over 2. Last but not least, the vertical shift is the number you're adding. There's nothing there, so that's a 0. All right, let's try graphing. So again, I have my midline at 0. So I start at my midline and I go up my amplitude and down my amplitude. Nice and easy when it's 1. And then I'm graphing 2 full periods. So 2 times 2 pi would be 4 pi. And then we're going to start cutting it in half. So there's 2 pi, there's pi, and then we got pi over 2. And now we just kind of start continuing the halving. So 1 pi and 2 pi, that's 1.5, or 3 pi over 2. 2 pi and 4 pi is 3 pi. 2 and 3 is 2.5, which is 5/2 pi. And 3 and 4 is 7/2 pi. Okay, now, in this case, we have cosine. Cosine's a little trickier, okay? Cosine starts at, well, if it's positive, it starts at the max. And if it's negative, it starts at the min. So which one is this, positive or negative? I hope you said negative because you'd be right. Negative means we start at the min. So start at the min, go to middle, max, middle, min, and just keep following that pattern until you've got one at every x value. And then again, we're just going to sketch our graph. Alright, I know we only got a chance to do a couple examples, but your teacher will do a few more in class with you to make sure especially that you understand the vertical shift. So just rewatch if you have any questions. Otherwise, see you in class.